Hi, everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live. Wherever you are around the world, I hope you're being safe at this time. It's quite interesting, the time that we're currently living in, with COVID and the coronavirus, etc. So I'm really hoping you're doing safe at the moment. I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Chris Hansen, and I work for Adobe in Sydney, Australia. And I'm a senior solutions consultant. So I work in the digital media space across the Creative Cloud apps. And I'm here today with a very special guest, and his name is Ian Haigh. And I'm just looking at my notes here. He's introduced himself as an all-round, computer nerd and video enthusiast. So welcome to the show, Ian, and please elaborate on the computer nerd and video enthusiast aspect.
Well, thank you, Chris. It is great to be back on Adobe Live. Computer nerd, self-confessed computer nerd. I think ever since I was a kid, I've just been drawn to computers and what they can do, like whether it's programming or graphics or communication or anything. It's just a world that I've enjoyed right back when I had a Commodore 64, before anyone knew what the internet was. And I was it's my journey to get to video enthusiast has been through the world of branding and design, and it's kind of a nice confluence or a sort of intersection of that storytelling and technology, which allows me to kind of play with computers while actually kind of having a career out of it as well. So it's just a really happy place for me to be in.
Well, that's great. I mean, I can certainly relate to that, because initially I started as a graphic designer, and I then ventured into the world of motion graphics and then video editing and production. So I'm actually really eager to hear your story and how you transitioned into that, and also some of the things that we're going to be seeing today. So I'm really excited to see what you've got for us.
Yeah, sure. Well, I started as right back in high school, and my art teacher, when I was studying painting, and he organized for me to do work experience at a pre-press bureau, which I don't even know if they exist anymore. And we're talking like, this is some time ago. And it was, creating the bromides and so on, that then the printers would use to create the plates to then print, offset printing and that kind of thing. And it was just that whole world was transitioning into digital at the time. And so it was all very new and exciting. We were using programs like PageMaker and Freehand, which don't exist anymore. And in that role, I got exposed to graphic design, and they were just like exciting kind of companies that had really good parties, much better parties than we had. So I was like, that's where I need to be, and started moving into that world. Then I went to London, and it was that kind of like, there was a really big explosion of multimedia kind of thing. And you remember there was like interactive CD-ROMs. People were making things with Macromedia Director. And then Flash came on the scene, and I was just lapping it all up. And then the first time I'd ever seen anyone using After Effects was in London as well. And I was just kind of blown away. I just didn't realize that was possible on a computer. And so I went and started working in a studio where they had some After Effects people, and just was in love. I just thought it was incredible. Then I moved to Amsterdam for a few years, kept pursuing a mixture of the pre-press and the graphics and Flash and web. And so it's just kind of, sometimes I think of myself as just like chasing butterflies or something. Every time something colorful flies past, I go, oh, what's that? And then I run after that for a little while. But then since being in Australia, and I started a little company called Ketchup with my wife. We've been doing that for about 12 years now. And that's been creating motion graphics and shooting video, sometimes writing and directing for all across various industries.
That's fantastic. And I detect a little accent there. It's not really in Australia, right? Where are you from?
That's correct. Yeah, I grew up in Wellington, New Zealand. And I've been in Australia for a little while now. I've got 2 Aussie girls, but New Zealand is my home.
Lovely, lovely. I can relate. I have two girls of my own as well. So what are we going to be talking about today, Ian? I know I had a look at the short list here, but I'm really interested to hear what you're going to be talking about, not only because it relates to some of the things that I do in my role, but also I'd really like to show this to customers that you're about to show us.
Yeah, so I think one of the great unheralded features, or at least it's not unheralded, but it's one of the things that I think people would probably be more excited about if they knew a little bit more about, is motion graphics templates, how you can set those up and use them for saving time and giving flexibility both within After Effects and creating them in After Effects and then using them in Premiere as well. So if people haven't heard of motion graphics templates at all, it's basically creating an After Effects composition and then making certain properties of it editable. You can wire it up in any number of ways, so you can have it being very, very simple through to very, very complex. An easy way to think about it, and that's the one we're going to look at today, is how to just create a title so that you can drop it straight into Premiere with no After Effects knowledge at all, if you wanted to pass it on to somebody, and they can change the text, and the text boxes behind it is going to automatically resize. We'll put animation on it as well, and then show you how you can use that in your projects as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. So essentially, does that almost saying that video editors don't need background knowledge in After Effects if they're picking it up in Premiere Pro? They just kind of,
absolutely. So yeah, because I know for some people who just want to cut in Premiere, but they want to be able to use beautiful motion graphics in their projects, but perhaps they just don't have time or they don't have the inclination to learn After Effects. This is a way that you can, through motion graphics, or MOGRTs as they're known, motion graphics templates, you can use beautifully designed and animated captions and titles for your projects. We're actually going to look at how to create that. It's not too difficult. And on that little journey, I'm going to look at some text animators as well, which can be a bit intimidating at first because there's a lot of options in there, a lot of things that's really difficult to understand. And I learned of a great technique. I don't remember where I saw it now, but we're going to have a look at that. So it helps you visually get a sense of what those text animators are doing.
Yeah, that sounds great. So what do you reckon? Should we jump in?
Absolutely. Let's get into it. So here's a demo of what we're going to sort of work our way through today. It might not end up looking exactly like this, but I shot this footage in Japan a few years ago, and I've just dropped in, this is a MOGRT. And so as you can see, the title comes in, the text animates on, and then it goes away again. And one of the beauties of this is that I can come in here and change the copy. So I could say something like, my mum, press return. And now you can see it's changed that text there. I can change the color. This is all within Premiere. I don't have to go back into After Effects at all. I can change the color of the text as well if I want to.
Okay, so we're looking at a finished product in a finished motion graphics template in Premiere Pro here. We haven't actually.
That's right. Yeah. So this is the end result.
Okay, great.
So as you can see, all of those little changes, it keeps animating. So it's like there's a live After Effects composition right within Premiere. And you can also, one of the really nifty things about this is that if I decide to trim that, so as you can see, it animates in at the beginning and then it animates out at the end. But if I trim it so that it's a bit shorter, the animation still works. It animates in and out, so it's adapted to the shorter duration.
So it honors the animation. It actually doesn't cut it out, so you have to go back and potentially put in further keyframing.
That's right. So what we'll look at is creating protected regions which don't get altered when you've trimmed or extended the duration of the MOGRT. So
that's actually really interesting. That's one of the questions I get a lot of. How do we actually protect those regions so that we can honor that motion? So I'm keen to see how you do that.
Yeah. So let's jump over to After Effects now and start about how to create this little MOGRT. Okay, so I'm just going to start with the brand new. I'm going to call it brand new so we know which one it is. I've got a brand new comp here, and I'm just going to drop in some text. Usually I like to use fruit as a healthy kind of placeholder for my text. Banana mango.
Is that what you have in your smoothies every morning?
That's what, if I could afford to have a banana mango smoothie every day, I reckon that would be a pretty swell start to kick off your day.
Fair enough. Or smashed avo on toast.
Yeah, exactly.
For our Aussies.
We'll use that for the next one. Smashed avo on toast.
Yeah.
So I've just chucked that type in there, and I'm just going to use a little trick just to we'll just keep it centered to keep it simple. So I'm going to type Command 7 or Control 7 on Windows and hit center text there for the paragraph. Okay. And now on my Mac, I'm going to hold down Command Option and type the Home key, which is going to center the anchor point in the middle of that, middle of that layer. And then I'm going to type Command Home, which is going to center the whole layer in the middle of my comp.
So why would you want to center the anchor point in the middle of the text? Why does it do that?
So if you want to do that, if you were going to make any transformations to the text, that it's going to center around the middle rather than if the anchor point was, say, at the top right, then your anchor, then it's going to be centered from there. Yeah, so now it's in the middle, so that if I type in any text here, it's going to remain centered in the middle of the comp. So you don't have to do it like that, but for the purposes of this demo, it's just probably going to be easier to keep it all centered.
Yeah.
And now I'll just get rid of the essential graphics window for the moment. So now there's a number of different ways of creating a text box around that. So I thought I'd sort of run through a couple of those, just get rid of that. So a couple of those demos for creating a text box. One of them is to do with with expressions. So let's run through that one really quickly. For people who don't know, an expression is a little bit of JavaScript code that you can attach to different properties on your layer. And so it effectively means that your layers can have dynamic attributes that change over time or change in response to something else happening. In this instance, because the width of our text could change, so if we change it from smashed avo to high, obviously that's going to be much smaller, meaning that our rectangle would need to change. So let's drop in a rectangle and see how that goes.
Can I ask you?
Sorry, go on.
What if I have no coding background? How would I create? Where would I start with expressions for this type of scenario?
Oh, watching YouTube videos is such a great way to get into it. I think for so many people, if you don't have any coding experience, and this is very, very common, is literally just kind of copying and pasting code that you've found elsewhere. So, there's a ton of websites out there. Yeah, exactly. And so there's a ton of websites out there. There's one which I can recommend to you right now as well.
Oh, yeah.
Dan Ebert's, he's going to pull up, here we go, motionscript.com. So this, for anyone who's keen to learn about expressions, Dan Ebert's is like the expression god in After Effects world. So he's got a ton of different examples out there. He's very generous with his explanations, takes you through why they work and how they work and so on. But if after today you are keen to get more into expressions, even just if you're the copy and paste type fan, then this site is a great place to start. But otherwise, I'd recommend YouTube.
Oh, that's handy. I'm gonna make a favorite of that one.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So coming back here, I'm going to go to my new shape layer tool and choose the rectangle tool. One handy little thing to note is that I've just drawn a rectangle here, and you can see that the anchor point isn't in the middle of the rectangle. There's actually a preference, so that if I go into my preferences up here, and it is this one, center anchor point in new shape layers. If that's on, then every time you create a new shape layer, it'll automatically put the anchor point in the center, which is just a handy little time saver. Yeah,
that's great.
So I'll just sort of roughly draw this rectangle over my type. It's automatically centered it. I'll send it to the back so that I can see the type there. It's looking pretty good. And now if I flip open the properties of that shape layer, I'm going to turn off the constrained proportions padlock. And now I can change the height and width independently. So I can get that looking about right. So that's not too bad. And then I'll type again, it's Command Home, which is just going to center that in the screen. So that's looking not too bad. I might want to move that type down a little bit because there are no descenders, just to make it visually centered. And now the problem that we touched on before is that if the type changes, the width of that rectangle stays the same, which is not necessarily what we want. So let's wire up an expression. I'll walk you through it, and obviously just jump in anytime with any questions. But what we want is an expression that's automatically going to change the width of this rectangle depending on the width of the text. So we need an expression on the size property of the rectangle path of shape layer 1. So I'm going to option click, that's alt click on Windows on the stopwatch. And it doesn't matter where you are on the timeline. You don't need to be anywhere in particular. No, you don't have to be anywhere in particular. If it's got keyframes, the keyframes will stay there, and it's just dropped in this. And that might not make any sense at the moment, but all that means is I haven't done anything yet.
Sure.
So it would respect all of your keyframes, it would respect all of the values, and all it's done is put this property into expression mode. You can see that the numbers have gone red as well. So that's an indication that there's an expression on that layer. If you want to toggle the expression off, that equals sign there lets you turn off the expression, and it's no longer active when that's off, so that you can sort of toggle it on and off. As you can, it's not changing anything yet because we haven't actually done anything. So in order to make an expression, we want to make the width of that rectangle the width of that type. So the first thing we need, and I'm just going to put in some new lines at the top here, is I want to get a reference to the layer up here. So I'm just going to type a variable. So we'll call it L equals, and that's going to say I'm creating a variable L, which is going to store a reference to the layer. The easy way now to get that reference in there is to get the pick whip, which is this little lasso looking spiral thing. I'm going to drag that up to that until it's highlighted, that layer, and let go, and it's automatically typed in the reference for me. So that pick whip, that is basically a connector to other layers that are in your layer stack, is that right? Yeah, that's right. So you can connect it to, in this instance, it's just the layer itself, but you could also connect it to a property. So if I type, for example, I'm going to type O equals, and then I'll use the pick whip to go to the opacity property of that layer. And there you've got transform opacity. So it's automatically typed in what I'm interested in. In this instance, I don't need that O1, that's just a demo, so I'll delete that. But now the variable L, which is just an arbitrary name, is going to store a reference to this layer up here, which is my type layer. And when you say arbitrary name, you said L, can I just type anything? Like, could I say text, for example? Yeah, there are certain words that you can't use that are reserved by After Effects because it needs them as part of the JavaScript programming language. But as long as you can always, if you're in doubt, you can prefix it with my, for example. So I could say my layer, or you could use fruit. Again, you could use pineapple, for example, if you're feeling, or if you're not in a healthy kind of mood, put in pizza. Burger. Okay. Pizza, we'll go with burger. Or something like that. Yeah, deep fried pizza. So we'll leave it on burger because we've got a food theme happening today. So just to show that it's arbitrary. So now that's going to store a reference to that layer. This part, we're going to get the width of the burger. So without getting into the real kind of nuts and bolts as to why, let's just type in. So we want to store the width. So I'm going to say my width. Yeah. And now we're going to query the burger reference that we typed in before. So I'm going to type burger dot, and you can see that the text editor is trying to guess what I'm typing ahead of time. So if I start typing so sour, S-O-U-R, it's popped up a bunch of guesses as to what I might be typing, which saves you having to think of it, every time you needed to type something in, and saves you a bit of typing and a bit of time. So now I'm going to use the down arrow to the one I'm interested in. This is source rect at time. So this is what's known as a method, and that's I can call a method on an object. I don't want to get too sort of bogged down in the details, but suffice to say, in this instance, if I just press return, and then between those brackets, I'm going to type 0, which is just the time that I'm kind of like looking at. So what this means right now is I'm going to store my width is a variable that's going to store the source rectangle, which is the width at the time 0. And then I'm not quite done. I'll put one more dot and then width. So I'm saying specifically, I want to know what the width of that layer, which we've called burger, is when the timeline is at 0.
Okay.
Now, if I press enter, nothing happens yet because we haven't actually. It's still the final line is the one that it's going to use. So I'm just going to grab my height as well in a similar kind of way. So I'll copy that whole line, paste it in there, but I'm going to change width in this sense, change it to height.
Yeah.
So now we have variables for my width and my height. And once we plug those in here, in this instance, After Effects is expecting you to give it back 2 variables. So, because if you look at size, there's a width and there's a height. These are the existing values for width and height. And we want to give it new ones. And the way to do that is to type in a square bracket. Then the variable, the first one is width.
Okay, so it's recognizing the above lines, my width, yeah?
Yep, it's guessed that we have, that we're using those variables. And now when I press return or enter, it gives me an error.
We've planned that,
you know
guys.
What? Maybe it's. I thought I could get away with not putting semicolons on there, but oh, there we go. So my bad. I thought I could get away with not putting semicolons at the end of line because we were using a new version, but I was wrong. Every line has to end with a semicolon.
Okay.
Okay. So.
And that's just because you're ending that line to go over to the next line.
Correct. So it's in JavaScript. Some of the newer versions or some versions, some flavors of JavaScript, they don't need the semicolon anymore. But in this instance, it does need the semicolon. So once they're all in there, you can see that it automatically has changed the width and height of the rectangle to be exactly the same size as that text layer. If I toggle that on and off using the equals button like we did before, you can see it's made it exactly the same size. So that's kind of working. One thing that we probably want to do is add some padding around it, because right now I was
about to say, it's
very snug. Not a lot of room there. Like I wouldn't probably deal with Christmas lunch very well. So I'm just going to add in here. You could either add it. I'm just going to add the value in pixels. So we could say up here, we're going to add 50 pixels, which will add it all the way around. And then I'll add 50 pixels to the height as well. And there you go.
So you just do a plus and then add whatever, and it has to be, it's in the pixel format, is it?
Yeah, so all of the measurements here are in pixels. That's just going to be, the easiest way to think about it. So this is added, so there's be 25 pixels on the left, 25 pixels on the right, and 25 on the top and the bottom as well.
Okay, there's also there's been a comment in the chat saying, I think Ian might be a bit hungry. All this talk of burgers and pizzas and smashed ever. It's actually making me a bit hungry. So
yeah. Maybe should I start talking about something else? Yeah. Maybe I need to get some more healthy references in there.
Yeah, we could do that. Some quinoa maybe.
Okay, cool. We'll use quinoa for the next one. So this is all looking not too bad, and now we can test it out by going back to the smashed avo layer. I'm selecting that text. If I type in quinoa now, then you can see that's automatically resized the rectangle. So that's kind of cool and kind of handy in what we want. there's a little bit more to be done, because what you can see is that if I now move that text, the rectangle has stayed put. It's not
it's not locked.
It's not locked to it. So what you could do is parent the parenting is a way to sort of create a relationship between two or more layers, where you can say this one is in charge, and then all of the children of that layer are going to follow it. In this instance, we could say, all right, I want the text itself to be in charge, and I want the shape layer, the rectangle, which we could call that background, just to make it a little bit more sensible.
Should always name your layers, guys. Layer hygiene, very important. something
that it's such a good habit to get into. And now, before we were using the pick whip to grab properties, but we can also use this pick whip under the parent and link. And if that's not showing up for you, just right click on here, and then you can choose it down there, parent and link. So you get columns, parent and link. And now I'll use that pick whip to sort of say, all right, taking that from the soon to be child and saying, you're my parent. So
obey me.
Exactly. Or I will obey you in this instance. So if I click on quinoa now and drag it, then the rectangle will follow it around.
So what if for some reason I needed to break that? How would I unlink it?
So that's a good question. So here you can see, if I just showing all of the parents. So in this instance, the background's parent is number 1, quinoa. If I just choose none, then we have orphaned that rectangle, and it's no longer related to the parent. So it's a very, very powerful, very simple, but a very powerful technique, parenting. So you can sort of see that with not too much coding, you can, and just here's a nice little shortcut as well. Like if you're wondering, you want to see all of the expressions on all of your layers with nothing selected, just tap the E key twice, and it'll automatically show you all of the expressions in your comp, which is a really handy way to see what's being affected.
So is that for if there's expressions on all layers, it'll just show all of those fan out?
That's right. That's right. Good. So it's just there are a few little keyboard shortcuts that are really good speed ups. A couple of which are, by typing a single letter, you can often bring up the property that relates to that letter. So if I just type P for position, it'll automatically show me all the position properties, or S for scale, Y, actually not Y, but you've got a bunch of different ones like that. And you can also use these to set keyframes as well. So Option S on a Mac, or I think Alt S on Windows would set a scale keyframe as well. So you can toggle scale keyframe on and off.
So you don't have to go over to the stopwatch every time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's handy.
So now that we've got a sort of a working model using the expression in there, we can then start thinking about how to get this into a MoGIRT format. And this is where the essential graphics panel comes in. So if I right click down here and go open in essential graphics, up pops this, which is it's been around for a little while, but it's such a great addition to After Effects. And this is what's going to allow us to make this into a reusable component, whether that's reusable in After Effects or reusable in Premiere. So to just go through what's happened here is there's nothing in this space yet because we haven't added any properties to our MoGIRT. If you want to see what properties you can add, you can just click this solo supported properties button, and that's going to show you now all of these properties are able to be added to this space here, which allows you then to edit them in or use them in a reusable context. So there are a couple of ways to do that. Obviously, the big one is if you're making a reusable title component is being able to edit the text. So if I was to just drag source text up here and let go, now if I come in here and type in new text, then it will automatically update over here.
Okay, and it's honoring, obviously with the expressions, right? It's honoring everything because you dragged in the correct property for that.
That's right, Chris.
Yeah.
That's right, Chris. So
just clarifying.
Yeah. So the expression will automatically update no matter what the text says here. Obviously, you know, if you were going to, you might run into problems if you had it like wider than the screen, for example. But for the purposes of this demonstration, yes, it will automatically update. So we've got that one up there, the source text. We could also say, for example, the background color of our rectangle. So if I come down here, another way to add it to the Essential Graphics panel is just to right click on it and then choose Add Property to Essential Graphics. So that's the background color. So if I came in here and edited the background color, that will update there.
So can I ask you, can you set specific colors that that video editors could only access in Premiere Pro? Like if I didn't want them to, let's say it's branding, right?
Yeah.
But, and I didn't want them to access, I don't know, reds and like warm colors, and I only wanted them to access cool colors. Is that possible in this?
Yeah, that's totally possible. So it requires a bit more kind of wiring up, but you can make really sophisticated sort of interfaces so that you can keep people, you know, within certain parameters, you know, so that they can get the flexibility where they need it, but they can't just go completely off target and make something that you don't want. So in that instance, and that actually brings me on to one of the nifty little features that you can use with MoGits. So if, for example, we've got our padding on our rectangle there that we added manually, we just added 50 in there. That's all well and good, but imagine that we wanted to give ourselves the flexibility to change the padding later on, depending on, you know, what the circumstances were, and make it a bit more flexible. So it's considered kind of poor practice to hard code values like that into your expression or into your code. So a more flexible way of doing it is to add a control. So if I go with the background rectangle selected, if I go to the effect menu and then down to expression controls, you know, a lot of people, I'm sure I was one of them, looked at those and went, I don't understand that, and moved on, and that's fine. But today we're going to talk about what those do. In this instance, if we grab a slider control, it gives us a new effect on here, and it literally is just to be used in expression. So at the moment it's 0 and it's saying slider control. If I click on that once, type in a return key, and then I can give it a name, padding, rename it. And now I'm going to use the same pick whip and assign it to a variable. So I'll call that padding equals, use the pick whip to get that value up there. Put a semicolon, won't make that mistake again. And now it's effectively saying, I want you, computer, to assign this slider value to this variable, which I've called padding. It doesn't have to be called padding. Again, you could call it anything you want. Yeah. Some health food, you know, wheat germ. Now, that would be confusing, but let's just call it
wheat. Okay, I was going to say wheat germ.
It was a while that people were doing like wheat germ shots.
Yes, I got you.
And you knew that they were good for you because they tasted terrible.
Terrible, yeah.
So I'll copy that, and now wherever I've got 50, I'll place in padding. So it's saying, what we're doing is saying, like, I want to use that value, whatever it is, as my padding. So if I press enter, you'll see that it will go back to 0 padding. And now I can change it with the slider. That's
great. Can you set a start and an end padding as opposed to it being kind of universal, I suppose?
Do you mean like, can you keyframe it?
Yeah, no, what I mean is, like, you know, you said it's 0. What if I wanted it to start at, like, let's say 5, and I wanted it to end at like 50. Is that possible?
So I think, so it's like if I started here at 0
Yeah.
and put a keyframe in and then said after 2 seconds, it's 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's,
Like
yeah,
that,
that's totally possible. So all of these are keyframeable, so that if I now play that back, you'll see that it's a little bit dark. Yeah. So yeah, that's a really good one to know as well, is that yeah, you can change these properties over time. You can use easing and other expressions on them as well. So there's a lot of flexibility there. So then I'll go back to what we sort of like maybe 50-ish, something like that. And then I can add that to Essential Graphics as well. So now we have a property in there that we're going to call padding. So these ones that we've added to the Essential Graphics panel up there are all going to be editable later on, like when we reuse this. So these are all of the properties that we would like people or ourselves to be able to change. You can also change the range of it as well, so that right now 0 to 100 is probably a pretty good bet, so that you can sort of say 0 or 100 up there, but you could put in negative values as well if you wanted to.
Okay.
So that if you wanted to go behind a type. So there's a lot of, you could even animate that so it sort of come up. So there's a lot of flexibility there. So now that we've added those to the Essential Graphics panel, this one here, set poster time, is really handy as well. So when we first started using the Essential Graphics panel, it took a sort of screen grab of what we were working on. If I set poster time, it updates that, so that if you want to have a nice little thumbnail to remind you of what your MoGurt looks like, just click
nice visual aid.
Time. Yeah, exactly. And now you can sort of see, if I make a new comp, which is going to be, we'll call this MoGurt
Just
demo.
want to call out, there's about 20 minutes to go. So if you have any more questions, guys, just put them in the comments and I'll ask Ian. Yes,
questions are good. So we were working on the one called Brand New. I've just made a blank one called MoGurt Demo. And so what I want to show you here is that you can actually use these features within After Effects. So we have like a base called Brand New, which has come through with all of the properties that we had on it. But then if I can edit those right here within After Effects, so I can change, say, the color. If I want to change the text in here, it's just a matter of, there might be an easier way to do this, but the way that I tend to do it is I just make it into an expression. So option click on that, use some quotes, and then I write, wow, this is great, exclamation mark. And now you can see,
only changes one.
It only changes one. And so you can basically, this is extremely handy way to make multiple, if you've got reusable elements in After Effects, but you need to vary the color, for example, then this is a terrific way to be able to do that.
That's great.
Yeah, because it's sort of, if I then go back to the base layer and I decide to change a property in here, so I change the font, for example, then everywhere that's used, it will automatically update throughout your entire After Effects project. So if you're using a large, if it's a big project, if there's a whole ton of, a client comes in and says, these are really big, way too big, then you can say, no problem, come in here, just change the size. Obviously that's not looking quite right because I'd need to tweak it a little bit, but if I come in here, and then it will automatically update right throughout your entire project. So massive, massive time saver.
Yeah, we got a question. Is there a way of restricting the duration, as in the example at the beginning that has motion at the top and the tail? Can you restrict the amount of trim?
Yes, great question. So let's have a look at that. So if I was to, we'll go back to where we were before. change this to, that's right, Chris. That's right, Chris. Oh, give me a fruit, pineapple. Okay.
You love your pineapple.
But yeah, I'm trying to move away from banana. Usually I use banana for everything, and trying to branch out. So why not pineapple? Pineapple is a good alternative. So if I had now a bit of animation on this, say, so we'll do something really simple for the benefit of, this will be, okay, let's say we had, I'm going to animate the scale of the background. So I'll turn off proportional scale and say we're going to start at 0 width, and then drop in a keyframe here, but I'll click the stopwatch, and then say we'll go back to 100, and then we'll just put a little bit of easing on that. We'll just type in under keyframe velocity, which is, I got to that by just typing Command-Shift-K, which would be Control-Shift-K on Windows. And then we'll say dimension X 0% and influence of 100. And
so
similarly,
keyframe velocity. Can we just explain that to people who don't know what that means?
Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of speedy there. So if you go, if you have a look at the curve, so I'll go into the curve editor by clicking on this icon up here, the graph editor. And if we're just looking at the scale, so right now we have linear easing. So that's starting at 0% and it's ending at 100%, and it's a completely straight line. So if I animate that, you can see the box does what we want it to, but there's no acceleration or deceleration at all.
It's not dynamic, right? It doesn't like kind of naturally come into the space, right?
Yeah, nothing in nature kind of moves like that. Things have got momentum, and there's friction, and so things kind of tend to start off slowly and then reach maximum speed, and then they slow down over time. So to make this look more natural, there's a couple of ways we can do it. For this demo, I think I'll probably just use the keyframe velocity. So this one, I'm trying to think how to, usually I just use the keyboard shortcut, so I don't quite know where it lives in here, but I'm just going to use the keyboard shortcut rather than have everybody watch me dig through menus for 5 minutes. So again, it's Control-Shift-K. So that's what this is going to do, is you'll see it on the curve here, is we're sort of saying like, at this keyframe, we're only interested in the X dimension because we're not, we haven't animated the Y dimension, so we'll only look at X. So we want it to be, this is going to be the most dramatic of all. Well, we'll turn it down a little bit. So it's going to start at 0%, so with no speed whatsoever. And then we'll say 50% is like, if you can think of like a Bezier curve, this influences how far out the handle is, like how much it's affecting that. And then we'll type in 0 for the outgoing velocity, and we'll type in 100% just to show the difference in the curve. So when I press OK, you can see here's the curve that it's made. And when I press, the difference being that now it's got that much nicer kind of motion on there.
So the difference between easy ease and this is you're controlling how much you want for it. Is that right? Yeah,
correct. So if I did type F9, which is easy ease, you get that curve, which is fine, but it's not. It might not be as dramatic as we want. So you can see it gives a more pleasing kind of appearance. But if you type in something like, as we did, sort of, then you're going to get a much more kind of like, this one takes longer to get to maximum velocity, and then it slows down as well. So the curve is steeper, which gives it a more kind of dramatic appearance. So there's our animation at the beginning of the, there's our keyframe, so that's the beginning. And then we sort of want that to be, say if we wanted the type to be masked by the rectangle, I'm going to use an effect on that, which is built into After Effects. And that effect is, I'm just going to type Command 5 to bring up my effects and presets palette, and it's called Set Matte. Set Matte lets you create a mask by using a different layer that you can choose from a pop-up menu. So if I drag that onto the pineapple text,
yeah,
I get the Set Matte, and then I wanted to choose the background as the mask, and you'll see it's automatically masked it out.
Oh wow, okay, that's powerful.
So yeah. Huh. And now we've kind of got this, and you can see that if I type in something else here, guava, it'll automatically resize. Okay, so
Set Matte, that's really good. I've not used Set Matte, so I'm gonna make a note of that myself.
Yeah, Set Matte's extremely powerful, gets you out a lot of tricky situations.
Yeah.
So overall, let's make the overall duration of this something like 6 seconds. So we've got our type coming in, and now we want our type going out. The easiest thing to do here is I'm just going to copy these 2 keyframes, paste them in here, and then I'm going to right click on it and choose time reverse keyframes.
Okay, that's interesting, because how you've done time reverse, all you've done is switched the original keyframes you made. Now, a lot of motion editors that I know would go in and rebuild those, and they wouldn't be perfect as the first ones that they created. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, no, I think if you were going for a certain effect, that would, you could spend more time kind of getting it right. Yeah. But as a starting point, you can still come in here and you can play with these curves if you wanted to. So you can sort of like have it start gently and then go very dramatically. So if we had a look at the overall effect here, it comes in like that. Yeah. It stays still for a while, and then it'll close the doors. So it's kind of if we decided that this was our maybe we'll make it a little bit faster as well. So I'm just going to cut that down. So if we say this is our kind of template and we like this and we wanted to use this in our projects. Mm-hmm. So the question was about how to protect the animation while you change the duration of the animation. So in this, you know what, I'm just going to leave it a little bit longer. So I'll go back to how we had it. Okay, so it's 6 seconds at the moment. Now in this instance, the way to do that, up here above your or on your timeline, this is called the time ruler, which lets you define your workspace. I think it's called the workspace bar, perhaps.
Just so you know, we've got about 7-ish minutes to go.
Okay, cool, that's perfect. So if I either drag the end of that out, so you can see that it's changing the highlighted area of my workspace. It's kind of a way, so if I press render now, it's only going to render that tiny little bit. But if I move it over the beginning, you can see that my keyframes are falling within that area. And then I right click on it, I can say create protected region from work area. If I choose that, you get a special looking little blue marker up there. And I'm going to do the same thing at the end. So I'll move my time indicator to just so that both of these keyframes are within that area. I'm going to type the B key for beginning, and then right click and I'll choose create protected region from work area. And now if I were to, in this instance where this is the brand new one, so if I drop that into, again, I'll call it time protection demo. And then if I drop the comp we were just working on into this brand new comp, you can see
it.
Yeah, so it actually looks different to your standard kind of thing. So that area is protected. If I drag that,
which means I can't edit it, right? I can't manipulate it like you're doing right now.
Yeah. So what it effectively means is like nothing is happening in this part of the comp, so I'm not worried about that. What I'm really interested in is that the time here, I want that always to play at the same speed. I want this part, the outro, always to play at the same speed, but I want to be able to vary the duration of this layer. So if I have a couple of them, like you can sort of see the effect that that would have.
Yeah,
if I play these
fantastic.
both. Yeah, so if I I can change the properties of it like we had before. Go back to my old favorite banana. I can change the padding on that layer, for example. I'm not sure why that, oh yeah, it is working, cool, it's just taking a while to update. When I play this back, I have to just move that up a little bit so you can see the other one.
Oh yeah.
So we should see, oops. Oh, must have been editing both of them, my bad. Oh no, I've done something wrong. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What I'll do is if I play that back, you can see that the animation portion of it plays at exactly the same speed. Yeah. Even though they're different durations. Okay, awesome. Now we've got 5 minutes to go. There was another question that I wanted to send your way, and it might almost set it up for the next session, which is on Thursday. Yeah. Is it crucial to work on these MOGITs ahead of the actual video footage, or can they go in any time? Oh yeah, they can go in at any time. So I think, you know, you want to be, depending on what you're trying to achieve, it might be that you want to be sympathetic to the video that you're creating. So, you know, in a design sense and so on, building elements that are going to suit your project. But there are a lot of pre-built MOGITs out there that people have made for just general consumption that are designed to fit in with any footage at all. So coming back to the one that we were looking at before, so this one was one that I created earlier that I've just dropped straight into Premiere. You could even have, for example, this one we've called Premiere Demo. So if I came into here to edit this MOGIT, you can see very quickly, so there's my protected area, my protected beginning and end. I could even I could even drop in a shape layer, for example, like this. Yeah. Gave it a little bit of opacity, faded it in at the beginning and the end. So that's putting in opacity keyframes. And same sort of thing, put that at the end and then time reverse keyframes. And then if I update this motion graphics template, so like this, and then if I drop it into my project again and sort of wipe out the previous one, then if all goes well, no, it didn't work. Oh, I haven't finished updating it. I want to replace it. And so how are you getting it in from Premiere though? Is it an actual motion graphics template file, or is it? So I'll just finish this thought real quick. Yeah, go. It's basically so what I've done here is just dragged on a background so that it sits right over the. Can you see it sort of dimming the background there a little bit? Yeah, yeah. Probably haven't done that very much. And so there's a way of just kind of making it generally usable, and it doesn't matter what the footage is doing in the background. How to get it in there is, so once you've done everything, got all of your properties and so on all set up the way that you like, you can even group them, which is one that I was working on before. So I've by going add formatting, you can add comments in here. So you could say, thanks for using my template. Then group them, make it all make sense. And then I just click export motion graphics template, save the project, it runs through. In this instance, I just want to save it to the local templates folder. I'm not going to worry about the compatibility because I'm only going to use it on my machine. If you were distributing it to other people, then it makes sense to have these warnings on to make sure that it's portable. Chuck some keywords on to make it easy to find, hit OK. I'm going to replace it because there's one already with that name Premiere Demo up there. And we're in Premiere. We've got 1 minute left, by the way, just letting you know. You just go into My Templates. There's the one, and just drag it out there, and there you go. And then you can edit it in the Essential Graphics panel. Awesome. So it's as simple as adding it into the templates, My Templates folder, and then accessing that from within Premiere Pro. Yeah, yeah. And you've got all of the same, you can edit it in exactly the same way as before. So you can, it's just like it's live in After Effects, incredibly easy to use.
Fantastic. That's great, Ian. Thank you so much for showing us that today.
Pleasure.
There's some amazing things in there that I didn't even know that you could do. That I'm going to go back and have a look at that Expressions website and just play around with some of the things you can do. What are we expecting in session 2, which is on Thursday?
Well, if anyone's got any thoughts in the comments about, because I did actually have a little bit more sort of additional ways to make a text background, which doesn't involve expressions, which people might enjoy. But otherwise, I wanted to look at some of the some little features in Premiere Pro. There's a couple of great tricks around using the multicam setup to trial different audio, for example, and also ducking and bits and bobs. Like
awesome. That sounds great. Thank you, Ian. Thank you for your time, and thank you everyone from wherever you are around the world for joining us. I hope to see you on Thursday, and see you there.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.